Even before Evil Dead 2, the first Evil Dead skirted the horror comedy line by going so far over the top, sometimes you weren't sure if you should gasp or laugh. In fact, some of the movie's investors complained to Sam Raimi initially.
A number of the investors came up to me after the movie and said, and they were a little bit angry, "You told me you were going to make a horror picture. Now this is a comedy."
But like the 2013 remake, Evil Dead Rise fully embraces its horror roots, and mostly leaves comedy at the door. And this time, when writer-director Lee Cronin goes over the top, it's with effects that weren't available in 1981, and certainly not on the first movie's shoestring budget. As a result, this one doesn't allow the escape hatch of telling yourself, "Pfft, looks so fake." If you ever wondered what a cheese grater can do to your skin, this movie leaves nothing to the imagination. It also doesn't require much guesswork to know when the scares are coming. Sometimes the movie even previews what will happen through images drawn in the Necronomicon. But because the characters are well written and acted, and because we spend time with them before the possessions begin, knowing what's coming doesn't spoil the movie. It makes it tense as we dread what's coming for Ellie, Beth, and the children. That's not to say it's humorless, but instead of Evil Dead's usual Three Stooges-inspired humor, it comes more from the dialogue, as characters try to release some of the unbearable tension. And as always, some of it comes from the Deadites themselves. Part of the fun of Evil Dead is that the demons could probably kill the entire cast in a heartbeat, but they revel in torturing them, so instead the Deadites take their time, allowing for plenty of fun psychological warfare, as Lee Cronin calls it. By the way, I'm about to get into spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, now's your chance to go see it, then come back. Like some of the best horror, Evil Dead Rise calls upon familiar anxieties, then takes them to the extreme. There's one scene where the 9-year-old Cassie is talking to her possessed mother through a peephole. Normally, I'd roll my eyes at anyone falling for the, "Hey, I'm all better now, why don't you come open the door" trick. But it works when it's a 9-year-old. There's some humor to the scene, but it's also tense and creepy. Looking through a peephole automatically creates anxiety for some people because it means you're trying for a glimpse at something unexpected. Especially in modern times with so many communication channels available, it's rare for us to need a peephole because we know who is coming and when. So if we need to look, it's because we're unsure who or what is out there. And in the case of Evil Dead Rise, it's your demon-possessed mother. Cronin also spoke about this scene in his interview with Polygon, saying, "I think one of the most terrifying things in the world is the first moment you see someone in your life in a different light you've never seen before. So let's say you're in a new relationship. You've been dating for a year, all is brilliant. You have your first argument, and you hear that person's voice pitch in a way you've never heard before, or you see a look in their eyes you've never seen, and you go, 'Oh my God, I don't recognize this person,' and that is really to me quite primally terrifying." That's a terror which can come into play for any possession story, where someone's face becomes a mask for something evil. But much of the horror is heightened in Evil Dead Rise, because Cronin chose to focus on a family. The scene is not a couple a year into a relationship. It's a 9-year-old seeing her mother as a monster. And one thing I appreciate in this movie over the originals is that with effects enabled by 2023 and this budget, the actors' faces aren't caked under layers of makeup, which make them unrecognizable. When possessed by a Deadite, the characters look dead and disfigured enough to be disturbing, while retaining a bit of the human face we recognize. When Ellie smiles at her children, or glances from one to the other, there's sometimes an uncanny valley effect that can be unsettling. The director also spoke about how he was influenced by writing the movie during the peak of COVID, when many of us were home far more than we'd ever been before. We don't like to be stuck in our home, certainly not when it's filled with demons, and certainly not when the choice to leave is completely removed. In the original Evil Dead, by a destroyed bridge and murderous trees. In Evil Dead Rise, by a destroyed stairwell and demonically possessed elevator. And in reality, by quarantines and lockdowns. At the end of the movie, we also see how the evil is picked up and carried elsewhere, like a contagious infection. And I'm sure anyone can relate to the anxieties of being stuck with family in close quarters, how it eventually gets old, how tensions rise, arguments break out, and you don't get along quite as well as you did at the start. It can tear families apart. And with the Necronomicon, that becomes literal. Well, until the end, then we can see how good it is at bringing families together. Many reviews of the movie and interviews quote Evil Dead Rise as being about motherhood. That's telegraphed early on in the movie when Beth finds out she's pregnant. It was clearly unplanned and doesn't sit well with her. So the movie primes you to think of an expecting mother's anxieties and view the horror through that lens. Beth doesn't get a chance to tell us what she's thinking. Just as she's about to open up to her sister Ellie, the earthquake hits, and their conversation never happens. But the primary fear we experience from her is around fulfilling the role of protector, because that's what she's forced to do when Ellie, the mother of 3, is the first one possessed. The father of Ellie's children recently left, leaving her as their sole guardian, and even when she reached out to Beth for help, the sister was too busy with her own ambitions to answer the call. So Ellie was left alone to do the job without any emotional support, and from the little we see, she seems to be doing a good job, juggling parenting and chores while also taking care of herself. When Beth arrives, Ellie is in the middle of dyeing her hair red, showing that she still makes time to focus on her own identity and express herself. That last point is one fear which is realized later in the movie with one of this franchise's most grotesque visuals. The Marauder, Lee Cronin's name for the many-limbed abomination that results when Danny and Bridget combine with their mother. He described its deeper meaning in his interview with Collider.
At a deeper level with this movie, it's the worst version of family you could imagine. It's like if you take the character of Beth, right, who's someone that's unsure if she wants to be a mother and maybe sees the danger of the shackles of that. And then you take her and she's presented with the all-encompassing smothering. It's like, imagine that thing hugging you. It would be like the worst hug in the world.
One common fear of parenthood is the feeling that you may be shackled or smothered to some extent. You start having to compromise your time between work or hobbies and raising children. Rise makes this literal. By combining the 2 children with their mother, all 3 souls are possessed and their bodies are thrown into one demonic mess. As Cronin suggests, imagine that thing hugging and smothering you for the most extreme version of the fear that you as an individual may be swallowed up by the responsibilities of parenthood. Another anxiety is that things will happen which we can't protect our children from, like the earthquake which precedes all the calamity in this movie. Then, of course, the extreme version, demonic possession, which touches on not only the fear of what we can or cannot protect children from, but also the fear that we ourselves may hurt them. We may be afraid they'll inherit some of our psychological scars, or an accident might happen, resulting in unintended physical harm. It's a terrifying thought, the sort studios aren't usually eager to explore, which is one thing that sets Evil Dead Rise apart, its willingness to put children in peril. It's also the last thought Ellie is able to express as an individual before the Deadite takes over permanently. "It's in me," she says before vomiting a large puddle of Evil Dead patented bodily fluids. Then,
"Don't let it take my babies."
Once Ellie is gone, it's all up to Beth. She's forced into the role of parent and protector. When Bridget blames Danny for cursing them with the book, and they nearly turn on each other, Beth is the mediator that brings them all back together. After Cassie is forced to stab a possessed Bridget through her skull, Beth is the one who comforts Cassie and tells her it'll be okay, despite the terror she herself must be feeling. In rewatching the original Evil Dead, I tried paying attention to Ash's character to see if anything could explain why he was the sole survivor, other than the character's dumb luck and Bruce Campbell's role as one of the filmmakers behind the movie. One thing we see early on is that after they play the tape and unwittingly release the Deadites, most of the cast get back to other activities, like card games. But Ash listens closely to the account left on the tape. It's clear that his guard is up, and he's begun to suspect something is truly going wrong, so he's trying to gather more information and prepare for whatever threat may be upon them. Beth, similarly, is not content to wait for the Deadites to make their next move. Despite the danger it may present, she takes the calculated risk of listening to more of the vinyl recording. She puts Danny and Cassie in the other room and listens with headphones to at least try and isolate the risk to herself. It doesn't exactly work out. Ellie realizes she can get in through the air vent, and as the recording reveals, dismemberment is only a temporary solution. Bridget returns to life and is able to kill Danny. But choosing to confront the recording, the original source of the evil, indicates a survivor's instinct in Beth and Ash that's proven when they triumph over evil, though in Ash's case, it ultimately gets the better of him, until the sequel reveals otherwise. Once it's just Beth and Cassie left, Beth protects her 9-year-old niece against her possessed mother, buying them a little time by thrusting a pair of scissors through Ellie's nose, and presumably into her brain. As they take a beat before making another run for it, Cassie asks, "Are you going to be a mom?" And after some hesitation, Beth answers, "Yes." This comes after Ellie smelled the additional soul in Beth's body. Her answer to Cassie is an admission that she's pregnant, but also a decree that she intends to face the fears of motherhood. She'll do her best to fulfill Ellie's dying wish by raising Cassie, and she'll raise her own unborn child. What gave her the confidence? In part, I think it was Ellie's leading by example. Beth saw what her sister was capable of in raising her children, but also saw that Ellie wasn't perfect. After Ellie seemingly died, Beth said over her body, "You're the one who always has the answers." It's easy to look up to a parent or older sibling and think they have all the answers. But Beth could finally see that isn't true. After finally listening to Ellie's voicemails, which she previously ignored, Beth hears that her sister was in just as much need of emotional support as her. And when things go wrong, Ellie doesn't always have the answers. Instead, she does the only thing anyone can do, her best. When an earthquake comes unexpectedly, all she can do is try to reach her children and make sure they're safe. When a demon takes her body, all she can do is beg with her dying breath that Beth protect her children. And Beth tried. Following her sister's example, she did the best she could, and was able to save one. The possessed Ellie's final line, before Beth kicks her head into a wood chipper, is, "You know, you really do look like Mom, and you're gonna fail miserably just like her." Although Beth doesn't explicitly state her fears, Deadites know how to exploit our insecurities, so this likely gets at the core of her anxiety, that she may fail as a parent, and that fear will likely remain, but Beth rejects it as a paralyzing one, because she was put through the ringer, and when tested, she didn't crumble. She did her best in a traumatic situation, and that's something she can keep doing. So after shredding the Marauder, the physical representation of her fears, a blood-soaked Beth grabs the chainsaw, a baton between evil dead heroes, and heads off with Cassie to face whatever dangers may come. But although you may stave off and even escape evil, it can never be entirely eradicated. The movie begins with a cold open. A girl named Jessica is possessed at a cabin and proceeds to kill her boyfriend and sister. Everything after takes place before the cabin, but at the end, we find out Jessica is a resident in Ellie's building. The evil left behind after her body is destroyed instead possesses Jessica, leading to that cold open. It's about as hopeful an ending you can hope for in a horror movie. The protagonist triumphs, but the need for vigilance never subsides, and the challenges never end, because evil will always lurk, and you never know when it may again rise. I think we can wrap it up there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more. And if you're looking for more content, I'm trying to live stream every Friday around 10 a.m. to talk about the latest movie and TV news of the week, talk about the channel, and whatever else you want to bring up in the chat. So keep a lookout for that. With that, thank you for watching, and see you on the next One Take.